Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, we're delving into another chilling case. We live in a world where the unpredictability of life constantly confronts us. One moment, you're surrounded by loved ones, enjoying life, and the next, they're crying out for help, reaching out to you with blood-stained hands. But you can't help them because your own life is flashing before your eyes at that instant. This isn't a movie, it's the most terrifying reality you've ever encountered. We only get one life, but death can be harsh, sudden, and intrusive. The story we're about to share is filled with pain, suffering, and anguish. Our thoughts and respect go out to everyone who knew and loved the Ortega family and to all those affected by this tragic case.
Police and coroners located the last of the bodies this morning. A particularly difficult task after the intense fire that reduced the home to rubble.
Yes, I'm shocked. I would never picture in my right mind he would ever do something to a family. I'm just devastated.
Merry Christmas to me and just kept walking down this way, and that was it.
Imagine a Christmas party with loved ones gathered together, celebrating the holiday season. But in an instant, the joy and laughter turned to horror and tragedy. On December 24, 2008, the Covina Massacre shook the small town of Covina, California, leaving 9 people dead and a community in shock. Gunshots rang out, and a devastating arson fire filled the home, trapping victims inside. The party turned into a horrible dream. Many people got hurt, and many questions were left unanswered. It was a very sad and scary moment. But what led to this unspeakable act of violence? The Covina Massacre remains a haunting reminder that even in the most joyful times, darkness can strike without warning. The Ortega family was having a great time together in their Covina home on Christmas Eve. In the dining room, Papa Joe Ortega, his wife of 53 years, and their children were playing a late-night game of Texas Hold'em. They had just finished dinner and were enjoying each other's company. The grandchildren were in the backyard, playing video games and hanging out near the pool. They were having so much fun that they didn't want the night to end. Meanwhile, upstairs, Ortega's 17-year-old grandson, Michael, was sitting at his computer, typing away. It was a peaceful and happy moment, with everyone doing something they enjoyed. But little did they know that this peaceful night was about to turn into a horror movie. Suddenly, there was a knock at the front door. The 8-year-old girl was so excited, she squealed with delight, "Santa Claus, Santa Claus." A man dressed as Santa Claus walked in, pulled out a gun, and shot the little girl right in the face. 2 of her uncles tried to protect her, but they were also shot and fell to the ground. The rest of the family, including the Ortegas and 3 of their daughters, tried to hide under the dining table, but it was too late. The gunman, who was the ex-husband of one of the daughters, was unstoppable. The fire started by a flamethrower device was incredibly intense, causing a massive explosion that sent flames shooting up into the air. The flames were as high as 40 to 50 feet, which is as tall as a 5-story building. It was a huge blaze that required a lot of manpower to put out. In fact, it took a team of 80 firefighters over an hour and a half to finally extinguish the fire. Can you imagine how dangerous and scary it must have been for the people in the house and the firefighters who were trying to save them? The fire was so intense that it made it really hard to identify the victims. The flames were so strong that they damaged the bodies, making it impossible to recognize them. So, the investigators had to use other methods to figure out who was who. They used dental records, like X-rays of teeth, and medical records, like scars or other unique features, to identify the victims. It was a challenging task, but they were able to use these clues to piece together who was there that tragic night. The Ortega family's worst fears came true that night. The gunman, Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, was relentless. He killed Papa Joe and his wife, 4 of their children, 2 daughters-in-law, and even the 17-year-old grandson who was innocently sitting at his computer. Number 1 was spared. The entire family, who had been enjoying a happy Christmas Eve just moments before, was brutally murdered. There were around 25 to 30 people celebrating Christmas Eve with the Ortega family. But after the tragedy, the survivors didn't want to talk about it publicly. However, some people working on the investigation shared information that matched what the family members said. This information helps us understand what happened inside the house. The family members described a very scary scene. A man with a gun wanted to hurt and kill people. The family members tried to run away and save their loved ones, but it was very hard because everyone was so scared and confused. When Bruce got to the party, a lot of the grown-ups were near the front door because some people were getting ready to leave. This made them easy targets when the attack started. Family members said that Charles, one of the Ortega sons, saw who the gunman was after he shot Charles's little niece, who was only 8 years old, and his big brother James. Someone yelled out, "It's Bruce." Charles was shot right after James was. It was a really scary and dangerous situation, and everyone was trying to get away from the gunman. Irma Chapa Ortega, a close family member, shared a heartbreaking detail about the tragedy. She said that James and Charles Ortega, despite being wounded, tried to get up and stop the gunman. They were badly hurt, but they still tried to stand up and grab him. Unfortunately, they couldn't. Irma also said that the older Ortegas, Joseph and Alicia, and their 3 daughters, along with one of their daughters-in-law, Teresa, hid under the dining room table. She had been in touch with some of the family members who survived the attack, and they shared these details with her. Someone yelled out, "Run! Run!" and chaos erupted. The Ortegas and 2 of their daughters, Sylvia and Alicia, might have been killed while they were still in the dining room, but their daughter Letitia, whose little girl was badly hurt, managed to survive. Letitia had hidden under the table for a short time. She called 911 and told the police dispatcher, "I heard the shots and everyone started panicking and running and we all dove under the dining room table."
He's shooting! He's shooting! What's your address? Ma'am, I understand. I need to know your address.
He shot. I heard the shots and they were like poppers and I wasn't sure what it was, so everyone started panicking and running, so we all dove under the dining room. Some of us dove, some of us left. My daughter's been shot. She was shot in the face on the side and she's bleeding.
I know, I let the officers know. The officers are making sure it's safe for the paramedics to
I
come
need a
in.
bandage, please. Please come immediately.
Who's in your house?
Immediately. Don't know who else is alive.
I know, ma'am. Just stay on the phone with me, okay?
My whole family, there's 30 people, 25 people.
I know.
Chapa shared a heroic story about her cousin Letitia. She said Letitia saw her hurt daughter stumbling out of the house and decided to make a run for it. A person close to the investigation said that even though the gunman shot the little girl in the face, she might have saved her own life by turning her head at the last second. The bullet hit her jaw, but luckily it didn't kill her. The person who gave this detail didn't want to be named because the police were still investigating what happened. After this happened, Leticia screamed at the dispatcher, "I need someone to come over and help my daughter. She's bleeding, she's been shot in the face." Some of the adults quickly grabbed the kids and carried them to safety. The investigators think that most of the young people were saved because they were in the back of the house, near the TV, probably playing video games when the gunman started shooting. The 8-year-old girl was hurt, and a 16-year-old girl was shot in the back, but luckily they survived. The only young person who didn't make it was Michael Ortiz, a 17-year-old who was sitting at the computer upstairs. Chapa said that Michael was probably killed by the explosion, or fire, that started when the gunman used a homemade device made from 2 tanks to set the house on fire. A law enforcement source said it appears that Michael was killed as a result of the fire or explosion and was not shot. It's a tragedy that a young life was lost in such a senseless act of violence. Michael's mother, Alicia, was also killed. But why did the murderer commit such a brutal act of violence? Bruce, a 45-year-old man, was very angry about his marriage ending. He and his wife had just gotten divorced, and he was consumed by hurt and anger. Instead of dealing with his emotions in a healthy way, he decided to take revenge on her and her family. He chose a tragic and devastating way to do it by attacking them at their annual Christmas party in Covina, California. A team of FBI experts studied Bruce's behavior and found that he had some mental health issues, including extreme narcissism and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Although there's no excuse or justification, these conditions likely contributed to his decision to commit such a horrific act. It's heartbreaking that a family's joyous celebration turned into a tragedy because of one person's anger and sickness. Bruce had a plan to escape after his attack on the Ortega family. He'd even bought a plane ticket to Illinois, thinking he could just leave the chaos behind and start fresh, but his plan didn't work out as he expected. When he set the house on fire, he badly burned himself. He suffered second and third degree burns on his arms, which are very painful and serious injuries. So instead of escaping, he was left with severe burns. It's amazing how his plan backfired and led to his own suffering. After his failed attempt at escape, Bruce drove 40 miles to his brother's house in Sylmar. He went there to end his own life. Lieutenant Fred Corral from the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office shared that Bruce had a wound on the top of his head, which suggests that he put the gun in his mouth before pulling the trigger. A toxicology test had to be taken on Bruce, and it was said to have taken up to 6 weeks to get the result. This test would show if Bruce had any drugs or alcohol in his system at the time of his death. When the police searched Bruce's body, they found something strange. He had wrapped $17,000 in cash around his legs with plastic wrap and was wearing a special underwear called a girdle to keep it in place. They also found his rental car parked a block away from his brother's house, but when they tried to move the car, they realized it was rigged with a dangerous device that would explode if they touched it. The police had to be very careful. Inside his brother's house, they found 4 empty handguns and a lot of bullets, over 200 rounds. They also found some leftover pieces from his Santa suit that were rigged to explode. Back at Bruce's own house in Montrose, California, the police found even more dangerous things. They found empty boxes that had held semi-automatic handguns, a special kind of shotgun called a Benelli M2 Tactical, and a container for a type of gasoline that was highly flammable. But what was most shocking was what they called a virtual bomb factory in his home. It was like a secret workshop where he had been making dangerous devices. It's lucky the police were able to find all of this before anyone else got hurt. On the outside, Bruce Pardo seemed like a really charming and generous person.
You know, when I first heard it, I knew he was wearing a Santa suit and I knew who he was because I had seen him, but more than one time. So, but I didn't think anything of it until they were saying that he used the Santa suit and he put stuff in the Santa suit, like guns and whatever he used. And then it kind of freaked me out thinking that maybe he had already planned this for a long time. And like I say, he stopped here, he ushered it at the church across the street, he stopped here a couple of times and knocked on the door and said, "Hi, how are you? How's your dog?" And "Mine's fine," you know, and da-da-da, and, you know, just nice guy.
But on the inside, he was hiding some serious problems. His marriage was falling apart, and it was causing him a lot of pain, but he didn't show any of this to the people around him. Even the people who knew him best had no idea what was going on behind closed doors. They didn't know that long before his divorce was finalized, Bruce had started secretly collecting weapons and planning an elaborate escape plan. He was living a double life, and no one suspected a thing. In 2004, Bruce Pardo met Sylvia Oraza. They were introduced by her brother-in-law, who worked with Bruce at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Sylvia was 40 years old and had 3 kids from 2 previous marriages. Bruce's friends thought she was perfect for him, a kind and practical woman with a big family. They thought she could help him settle down and be happy, and for a while, it seemed like they were right. Bruce and Sylvia got married and started a new life together. At first, Pardo was drawn to his wife's warm and welcoming family. But after the first year of their marriage, she told friends that he had become cold, miserable, and distant. They often argued about money. In March 2008, Bruce and Sylvia decided to separate. Sylvia asked Bruce if she could stay in their home until her daughter finished kindergarten, but Bruce wasn't having it. While Sylvia was out at a family gathering, Bruce packed up all her stuff and left it in the driveway. Sylvia was devastated. She had to move in with her sister in Glendale and eventually filed for divorce. Bruce went to Gun World in Burbank on June 13 and bought a handgun for almost $1,000 cash. He got fired on July 31 for fraud and tried to get unemployment benefits, but couldn't get them. He went back to Gun World on August 8 and bought another handgun. He kept coming back to the store, buying a total of 5 handguns. He also ordered a Santa suit from a costume store, saying it was for a kid's party. He paid a $200 deposit and promised to pick it up in November. Bruce also went to a gun shop in Iowa and bought 16 magazines that can hold 18 bullets each, way more than California laws allow. And just a week before Christmas, his marriage to Sylvia was officially over. They had been having too many problems and couldn't fix them, so the judge ended their marriage in a courthouse in Burbank. Just before Christmas, Bruce Pardo rented 2 cars, a Dodge and a Toyota. He packed the Toyota with all sorts of stuff, like maps, water, food, clothes, and a can of gasoline. He also put in 2 computers. Later that night, his neighbor Bong Garcia saw him leaving in the Dodge, which was weird because he usually drove his fancy Escalator Hummer. Bruce said he was off to a Christmas party, but Bong thought it was strange. He had gone to carry out his revenge. After he set the house on fire, as the house burned, a neighbor saw a blue car drive away with its headlights off. A pair of fake glasses and Santa's hat had been dropped in the front yard. Bruce drove to his brother's house in Sylmar, 40 miles away. He was badly burned, with severe injuries on his arms, hands, neck, and legs. His Santa suit had melted into his skin. He was in a terrible state and couldn't escape anymore. When his brother got home at 3:10 a.m., he found Bruce's body on the couch, with 2 guns next to him. He had shot himself in the mouth. He was still wearing his wedding ring. Leticia Józef-Polsky is a strong woman who chooses not to let anger and hate consume her. She says, "I can't do anything to change what happened. I can only focus on what's been brought to me and the good things that have been brought to me. I appreciate that." She's grateful for the love and support she's received from people she didn't even know. This gratitude has helped her heal and find peace.
And as much as I miss my family and my loved ones, I just am so full of gratitude for what I have had, the blessings that I've had.
Leticia has also stopped dwelling on the past and the person who hurt her family. She says, "This is what he's done, enough. I'm not going to allow you to consume us with your evilness." Instead, she chooses love and encourages others to do the same. Leticia believes love is the strongest energy and that it can bring people together and help them heal. She also thinks it's important to teach our children about love and kindness so they can grow up to be good examples for others. She says, "Our kids are our future, and we have to be an example for them. If we teach them that it's okay to hate, it's okay to be violent, and make them feel less than what hope we have."
During a school walkout, Covina Józef-Polsky read the names of the 17 victims killed in Parkland, Florida 1 month ago. Gun violence is personal for the LaSalle High School student. Nearly 10 years ago, she survived a Christmas Eve massacre when she was only 8.
Being able to really fight for something that is truly, truly close to my heart is very different.
12 years have passed, and Leticia and Covina Józef-Polsky are working hard to keep their family's traditions and happy memories alive. The family still gets together for dinner, exchanges gifts, and shares stories about their loved ones who are no longer with them. On Christmas Eve, they visit the cemetery where their family members are buried instead of going to church. One of the nephews, who lost both his parents in the tragedy, has become the guardian of his 3 younger siblings. Leticia and her husband took in her sister's youngest daughter, and Leticia worked hard to make sure the surviving kids still had a sense of Christmas. She told them that the Santa who came that night wasn't the real one. The kids even went to a special camp to help them deal with their grief and trauma. Leticia says no matter where you look, there are memories of what we used to have and then memories of that terrible night. You can't escape it. But even with all the pain, Leticia knows that Christmas will always be special, and they will keep celebrating, no matter what. Even though the investigation ended almost 10 years ago, the detectives who helped the family still keep in touch, especially around Christmas. They care about the family and want to make sure they're doing okay. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest updates. Stay tuned for more gripping stories from the world of crime. Until next time, stay safe and take care.